Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Garibaldi Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast. I'm Max Sayes, your host, and as Forest play their second game of the season and draw away at Crystal Palace, the annual draw, I'd like to call it, at Selhurst Park. We never seem to win there. It is always a draw. And what has been named the El Boardroom, El Courtroom Esco, lots of names given to it, lots of stuff off the pitch happening between Forest and Palace. And lots of stuff happening off the pitch for just Forest this week that we haven't had a chance to discuss yet on the podcast due to various bits and pieces. But we're here now to not only reflect on Forest Palace 1-1, thanks to a Callum Hudson-Odoi finish, but a well-taken finish, by the way, but also discuss Nuno's future, Edu, Marinakis, Adama Traore, and anything else that comes our way in the next half an hour or so, joined by the man himself. No better man to do it with me this evening than Mark Turner. Mark, good to see you, mate. I was about to say we'll start on the game. No, we won't. How are you? How's things? What have you made to this week before the game?
No better man to do this with you, right? After you publicly announced last week that Dave and Sarah were your favourites, you knew that was going to come back and bite you.
Yeah, I just said that to make him happy, Mark. You know me. Only kidding.
It's been a rough week for me personally. I've had an absolutely cracking migraine since Monday.
Oh, nice.
It's one of those I can't shift. I think it's just straight up congestion. And then, of course, nose started running and all the fun and games that come with that. So it's been a rough week, which Forest then further compounded in the last 72 hours by, had I not had a headache already, Max, I certainly would have had one by the game today. It's been, we hear the term Spursy thrown around, don't we? We all know what that means. And I think anymore now, Foresty is going to have to come into the lexicon, because we just have this incredible ability to shoot ourselves in both feet. And every week seems to be a new drama. And yeah, it's been a really tough and troublesome few days, culminating in, I think, a really poor match. So I know we're going to get into the weeds on that. It was exhausting watching the game today, Max.
Yeah, I agree.
It really was. It was really. It just felt on edge the whole way through without there being anything on the field to actually put us on edge. It's like, guys, come on. It was that meme, right? That guy poking something with a stick going, come on, do something. Anyway, broad strokes, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell you what then, part of the thoughts on this week, we'll get on to Edu, Marinakis, Nuno's relationship with both of those, and Nuno's pre-match interview as well that he did with Sky, which maybe should make us all a little bit more happier or put us more on edge. Let's talk about the game, Mark. I agree with you. I thought it was, I think the game itself had so much surrounding it off the pitch, and it's going to be a distraction for footballers. Managers will say it isn't, but even the stuff before this week with the Marinakis and the Palace involvement and the Europa League debacle, as people are calling it, that's bound to play a part in a fixture like this. I thought Forest started the game fairly okay, but a pretty lacklustre first half after probably the first 10 minutes. Second half, much better, much improved. Was shocked to not see substitutions at half time, given the firepower of a bench that we will get onto, which led to more chances for Forest to potentially win it in the end. Second half, again, a little bit better. And then Callum Hudson-Odoi pops up Mr. Reliable and does what he's kind of done all throughout his time in a Forest shirt. So thank you to him. Always grateful for him. So I thought, I agree, Mark. I thought it was an interesting game. I thought it was a bit of a nervy affair at times as well. You could tell the players seemed a little bit distracted, in my opinion, of what's been going on off the pitch. I guess, what did you make to the game overall further? And then Callum Hudson-Odoi popping up and doing what he does, Mr. Reliable.
You don't really need me on the episode today. All my notes, you flagged them all. You nailed it perfectly. What a great summation of the match. First 10 minutes, Forest looked a little peppy. I thought, great, they're really up for this. This is going to be a 3 or 4-0 hammering. I will say that the away fans, the Forest away fans, were magnificent. We heard the Europa song being sung out. We also heard Stevie Parish, he's one of our own, which was magnificent. So good job to the travelling Garibaldi. But after that first 10 minutes, again, when Forest looked like they might be here to play, it went south from there, didn't it? Obviously, Palace got the goal in the first half. But honestly, Max, I just felt like we lacked spark. The decision-making was poor. The attempts at creativity were poor. Max, our deliveries were atrocious today. From dead balls, from free kicks, we only had a couple of any note, but from corners and even open play. Balls into the box were woeful. Yes, I'm grateful to Callum Hudson-Odoi for an excellent finish. I always wonder in those situations what's going through both Callum's brain and Hendo's brain, right? Because obviously they've been on the same team. They sort of know each other really well. I'm wondering if Hendo's expecting Callum to do what he did and nip it in front post, which we've seen him do before. But regardless, it was a good finish. But prior to that, I thought Hudson-Odoi had a really poor game. I've got to be honest with you, I really am struggling to think about a player today who was more than a 6 out of 10. It was that poor across the board. And I want to spend a minute talking about Ndoi as well. Great ball to Callum, obviously. Ndoi to Odoi. It's a pretty neat link up. But and I'm not going to look. He's from another country. He's from another league. He's got to have time to acclimatise. I'm not one of those fans who get on players in the first game or two. His goal was excellent last week. It was instinctive. It was all he could do, right? He had no time to think. He had to throw himself full length, as he said in the post-game interview, and try and get something on the end of it. The pass today was literally all he could do. The ball came to him and he thrashed it through the defence, hoping somebody would run onto it. Whether he really meant to put it in the path of Hudson-Odoi as well as it did, who knows? But where I'm seeing his Achilles heel a little bit is when he has time. Like when he has time on the ball, when he has the ability to think, when he has the ability to create link-ups with his teammates, he's really struggling to make those connections right now. Again, don't think he's a bad player. I think he's a great squad player, and I think he'll contribute well this season.
Is he just going to be one of those players, Mark? And hear me out here. And I actually didn't think of this point myself. So full credit. I can't remember who tweeted it on Forest's ever so fascinating timeline on X Twitter that suggested that Ndoi was going to be one of these players that could be quite quiet for 60, 70 minutes. And then he pops up and does a pass like that or does something like that. I guess maybe you could argue the same with last week with his goal. Did he do much else other than that? I think I am more than Ndoi's performance. I am more shocked that Nuno didn't make changes sooner. And I wonder, and I'm just speculating this here, if that is a bit of stubbornness, given the stuff this week we've seen with recruitment, whether he should have been brought off at half time. Well, he wouldn't have made that pass, true. People could say that, but I just wonder whether Nuno was a little bit slow on making the changes when you've got Amari Hutchinson on the bench, when you've got Jesus who can still kind of play out wide. You've got Calamendo, who's another attacking option. So you've got attacking options on the bench to bring them on, replace Ndoi and change things up slightly, which he did when we kind of got back into the game. So that was what I was more shocked at. I wouldn't say it was an awful performance from Ndoi.
No,
I think he's got to grow into the Premier League.
Agreed.
I mean, Sangare today was all right. I thought he played better last week, but Sangare took time to grow into the Premier League. It took him a season pretty much. So some of these players, despite sadly Forest spending 30, 40 million on them, will take time to grow into the Premier League.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, I'm not trying to isolate Ndoi. The only reason I make those comments is because obviously people are losing their minds online about the pass, and it was a great pass. But let's not let one moment of instinctual action kind of take over the rest of his performance. Forest were really struggling in the right-hand side, and the first half, Max, down that right-hand side. You mentioned Sangare. I don't agree. I think our entire midfield today looked woeful. I thought Anderson had flashes of really good moments. Morgan Gibbs-White just over-egging the pudding, just unnecessarily so. And of course, that led to Crystal Palace's goal. And I have no problem with Morgan doing the flicks and tricks. Absolutely no problem whatsoever in the opposition's half. You don't do it on the edge of the edge of your own box. But down that right-hand side, we had Ndoi not tracking back and providing cover. We had Sangare trying to slide across and intercept balls and not being able to do so. It looked like Aina was completely out of position, which was pulling, Milenkovic and or Murillo out of position most of that first half. So to your point, I don't understand why Nuno wasn't. Maybe he was. We don't know what was going on in his head, but it didn't seem like he was looking to make changes at halftime. And you say, or maybe that was just Nuno being stubborn, given everything that's happened this week, Max. That's kind of his MO. I mean, when was the last time he made subs before the 70th minute? It's very, very infrequent. And today, even again, we're up at the 70th minute, and I'm looking at the bench going, look at the talent. Give those boys a chance. And I want to talk about the subs as well, but I also want to take breath because I am raging. This is me calm right now about Forest, so I'm going to take a breath.
Yeah, we might come back to the game, but I thought
we'll talk about the subs at some point for sure.
Yeah, we'll talk about the substitutions in a bit. I'm just, as we record this episode, because we're not live and we're about half an hour after the game is finished, but I'm kind of reading between the lines here of Nuno's interview as well. I'm just looking through his press conference.
I haven't heard it either. Quickly. I haven't heard it.
Here's a quote from the interview. The bond between the team and the fans is unbreakable. Hopefully we can move forward from this nonsense. That's Nuno responding to a question from the Sky reporter around his relationship with Marinakis, and Edu said very, very similar before the game. Mark, before you give your take on it, I'll give mine. I think we might be in positions where we both agree. Look, I think the signings this summer for Forest have been excellent. And I think that they are some very, very talented players. Yes, you can argue that Amari Hutchinson maybe is a little bit too, the money we've spent on him. But I think if you look at James McAtee, you look at Calimendo, you look at Jesus, you even look at Jair Cunha, who else have I forgot, Mark, that I'm bound to have missed, but so many others that have come through the door this summer. And I think then to hear Nuno's comments last week, which I probably dismissed, even though at the back of my head an alarm bell was ringing, probably dismissed because I thought, well, there's nothing of it. We'll go and beat Brentford, and that interview will just be a badly timed interview that everyone forgets about. There's then news broken on Friday morning as I move house, and I'm in a frantic rush, Mark, and see this news at 9 a.m. from no disrespect to him, but random Spanish-Portuguese journalist to say that Nuno's future's in doubt and Forest are considering replacing him with Ange Postecoglou. Thought there was nothing of it. We then have the Forest press conference at 2:00, which many esteemed reporters such as Sarah Claps and John Percy go to. And I read the comments straight away from Nuno after the press conference and was almost in disbelief, as I'm sure Marinakis was and the rest of the staff at the club at the comments that Nuno suggested him and Marinakis weren't close. It was a broken situation. And then I listened to his interview with Colin Fray, which said, I'm sorry for this happening, which shocked me because Nuno brought this up in the press conference. And let me just add here, as someone that, I don't want to go on a rant, but as someone that works in media and has been to press conferences, and as I'm sure you have as well, Mark, in the States, sports personalities and managers and any press conference in any type of media, whether there was a police press conference, they use press conferences to get their narrative out. So whatever Nuno is feeling that day, he will be sure to answer in whatever way. Whether they're not
interested in your questions at all. Which, and if you watch the Sky one on Friday, that was completely unprovoked. So sorry, Max, carry on.
Yeah, so absolutely. So for Nuno then to bring up the comments and the frustration about him and Marinakis' relationship was just crazy. And from in my opinion, out the blue and wrong to do so. We are a week into the season, 2 weeks now if you include today's game, pretty much. No, we're not. We're a week. It could be 2 weeks going into this week. We're in the early days. Summer's done. Pre-season's done. Why on earth is a manager almost undermining not only the owner, undermining not only the club, but making Forest literally look like an absolute laughing stock? And we talk about with Dave on the podcast about going under the radar. Well, Forest certainly don't do that with comments like that. So in my opinion, I appreciate Nuno's concerns. Do I think Edu should have been brought in straight away and the recruitment completely given to him and Nuno maybe to have little to no involvement at all? No, absolutely not. Nuno still should have an involvement. I remind people Nuno's head coach, not manager. That means he coaches the players. Doesn't really, sadly, in modern football, have that much of a say into the recruitment. To quote, spit his dummy out, after the Adama Traore news, who I don't think is an amazing player. I'd certainly rather have Amari Hutchinson in Forest side. I will say that now. I'm just very, very shocked by it all. And I think, yes, Marinakis and Edu aren't totally not to blame for this, because they have to take some responsibility of letting this almost relationship be broken down, to be forced to Nuno then to reveal it to the media. But for this all to come out was just crazy. And I think Nuno, Marinakis and Edu have not acted in the right way at all at a professional football club. And I think it just makes Forest look like an absolute joke going into the opening few weeks of the season. Mark, I'm sure you agree.
Wow. Max Hayes.
I know, there we go.
Telling it like it is. All right. Well, so you covered most of the bases. I am genuinely furious. The last 72 hours they've been embarrassing. They've been alarming. They've been anxiety inducing. And so I'm trying to compartmentalize this and keep it concise. And I put it into essentially 3 boxes. The first is, as I mentioned earlier, this was entirely unprovoked. Nuno decided to let this cat out of the bag. Nuno instigated this public furore. It was completely unnecessary. Regardless of what's going on behind closed doors, you brought this on yourself. To then say you want to put this nonsense behind us, well, mate, you started that ball rolling. Regardless of how ticked off you are, this didn't need to come into the light. You're not going to hurt Marinakis or Edu by going public with this. The only people you're going to hurt are the club and the fan base. And I would argue as well, Max, potentially the players. And I'll come on to that in just a second. The second thing I would say is, of my 3 compartments, is if you're going to go to war with Marinakis, you're going to lose. Period. End of story. Right? So when you think, okay, what's he trying to accomplish here? Well, either he's very naive and he's overplayed his hand because he thinks all the players, all the fans, the whole city of Nottingham and the community further flung are behind Nuno regardless. Mate, you're not Brian Clough. You're just not. When you've been at our club for almost 2 decades, when you won a league title with Nottingham Forest, when you've won 2 European Cups and countless other pieces of silver, well, then, yeah, maybe you can throw your toys out and throw your weight around. But this is a battle you're going to lose when you're 2 seasons in against a bloke who's invested whatever it is at this point, 200 million quid in our team. So essentially, it's either you've overplayed your hand or you want to get fired, which again, don't use our club to reach those ends. It's just immature. And then the last thing I'd say, coming back to it could potentially impact the players, is I do wonder whether that showed up in the performance today. One of the things that Nuno has been so vehement about is developing culture. His big frustration this preseason isn't the players that we brought in, it's how late they've arrived, right? Because we haven't had a chance to get them in there and create this bond, which we know existed last year. We saw it all over social media and we saw it on the field. And so I have sympathy for that. But here's the thing. What you did this week has damaged this culture dramatically. Hopefully not irreparably. Hopefully it's something that we can smooth over sooner rather than later. But you've now got an entire dressing room looking around going, what is going on? Is the boss going to be here? Some of them are very close to him. Like you, Max, some of them are probably thinking, Ange Postecoglou? Oh my God. You don't know what's going through their heads. Players don't need those distractions. They need to be 100% focused on pulling on that shirt, going out there and putting a top performance in for Forest. And that didn't happen today. And I do wonder if this had some bearing on it. Yeah. And soapbox away.
Yeah, and relax. No, I completely agree, Mark. I'll also throw into it that, I think Marinakis has to take some responsibility for this. We'll always look, if Marinakis sold the club tomorrow, I'd always be grateful.
Max, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You do it behind closed doors. If I'm Nuno and I don't like the way you're running the club, right, I have 2 choices available to me. Do my best to resolve that issue, leave.
But surely Marinakis has to take some responsibility, Mark, for not getting it done behind closed doors, for not trying to fix the relationship between Edu and Nuno.
No, because he wasn't in a press conference flapping his gums. No, I'm sorry. We don't know what's going on behind closed doors. We've heard things about Edu leaking stuff, and we've heard Marinakis being completely surprised by this whole thing, right? Oh my gosh, where did this come from, right? Which has to be nonsense. This can't be happening, and you, as an owner, have no idea. But no, I'm sorry. in terms of behind closed doors, what's brought us to this point, I cannot apportion blame. I don't know if it's 80% Marinakis' fault, if it's 90% Edu's fault. I have no clue. But what I can tell you, public facing, is the only one who's damaging our club right now by the way they're acting publicly, like you said, Max, in a manipulative fashion, utilizing the press pack for their own ends, is Nuno. And that's supremely disappointing because he's a coach I have a lot of respect for and has just given us an amazing season.
I do see the point about the relationship being broken and whether that's Edu's fault. But I've read a lot of articles this week. I've tried to surround myself with facts. And I'll tell you now, I don't know anything. I don't know anything inside the club. I am literally just like a fan talking about it as you are, Mark, as the majority of our listeners are, reading the articles and reading almost the speculation that has been released in the past 72 hours. And some of it has been kind of proven given this press conference, really. I read Daniel Taylor's article. I'm biased, but give it a read if you've got an Athletic subscription. It's brilliant. What I'll also add is Edu's staying away from the training ground. Nuno is very much the aggressor in this. That's not my words. That's not my opinion. Even that is the words of Daniel Taylor in the article, and obviously sources from inside the club. So it's a really shocking situation that Forest almost seem to use the phrase shoot themselves in the foot and completely almost even ruin a great summer of, in my opinion, recruitment, because I do think these are good players, Mark, coming through the door. And also, what kind of message does it send to these new arrivals, to a James McAtee, to an Amari Hutchinson, to a Callum Owendo, who think, well, Nuno doesn't seem to want me then.
Well, also, you look at we talked about the Traore situation, right? The flip side of that, of course, is the Douglas Luiz situation. And we're not going to be hypocrites here. We were on the last pod with Sam, right? Saying, do we want Douglas Luiz? And all of us said, cracking player, would be a good addition at the right price, but it didn't look like we were going to get him at the right price. So no, we don't want him because it's going to suck up too much of the resource. That was our position. Evidently, a great deal has been done subsequently. We've got him on loan with, I think it's an obligation to buy. So all of us are like, yeah, you know what? That's a good addition. Clearly, based on all of the reports we've heard, Nuno didn't want him. That was an Edu buy. Luiz is on the bench, probably because he had to be. Doesn't get brought on. Now, you and I are founding members of the Ryan Yates fan club. I think both of us would be hard-pressed to make a case for Ryan Yates being on the field before Douglas Luiz. It's horses for courses. There's definitely situations where that could be the right move. But in today's game, a KG1-1, where you're looking for forward-thinking, attack-minded players, it just felt obstinate from Nuno. And again, that's his right as coach. Like you said, he's the coach. His job is, to work with the players and get the best out of the players. So maybe he just decided that's not the right play today. But you do have to wonder if there was something in that in regards to what's gone on before. And again, I come back to my earlier statement. How then does that affect the players on match day? It's just not a good look. It's just been a wretched 72 hours, with the exception of the fact we've signed some great players.
Yeah. And to be a bit of a positive brain from young shoulders, Mark. I think that it was I think that will be a valuable point come the end of the season. And look, every point on the board is good. We're still unbeaten. We've not lost today. Yeah. It was a good point. There were some good signs during that performance. I just think everything this week has overshadowed and probably made us all, if I'm totally honest, I sat down today to watch the game on the sofa and felt deflated before a ball was even kicked. Yeah. Football should be a game that makes you deflated on the pitch, not off it. And that, for me, is where the frustration comes from. I also think that this needs to be sorted ASAP. And I also throw into the mix, I've been a big fan of him. I think Ross Wilson was a brilliant addition to Forest as head of recruitment, as chief recruitment officer. He dealt with a lot of the recruitment last season. He seemed to get on well with Nuno. Maybe we should have stuck with that plan and not bought Edu in. We'll see what happens.
Well, speaking of recruitment, can we talk about the subs before we run out?
Of course, we can talk about the subs before we talk about Nuno's future and if he's going to get replaced.
All right, fantastic. Well, I just want to say I thought it was they were exciting additions. Thought McAtee looked, as you would expect, very composed. Some great touches. What I really like about him is a couple of things. Firstly, A lot of his touches are always they're forward thinking, right? He's taking a touch out of his body and he's always facing upfield. The other thing that made me chuckle a little bit was some of the shapes that he was creating were very Manchester City. So that's probably a good thing, because that's not, bring some of that DNA to the City ground, please. But also that might not be something we see for too much longer once he gets into the, I was going to say the Nuno mix, the Nuno way of coaching, but who knows if that's going to be a thing for much longer. But no, I thought he looked good. Hutchinson, I also thought looked really peppy. Obviously had 2 good chances. You'd have hoped he'd done better with at least one of them. And we haven't seen much of Jesus either. So even though he wasn't a debutant today, I want to give him a shout out. Although, yes, that was a fantastic strike that rang the woodwork. Really ambitious. I will say he had a player there wide open. I mean, easy square pass, tap in for a teammate. And I think it was Hutchinson who was tearing through to join in. Yeah. And it's hard though, because
chances at the end.
It's hard though. Like if any other player but a forward, you're like, why aren't you squaring that ball? If it's a forward, that's what they get paid to do, is hit, shoot, try and score, hit the back of the net, right? So it's really hard to sort of say, go against your instincts as a forward and square that ball, but it would have been the smartest choice. And I think, Max, kind of in conclusion, in regards to the game, for me at least, that was a game in a nutshell. It was bad decisions, one after the next, not able to connect passes, making wrong choices. It was just so kind of bitty and fractured, and it wasn't the fluid Forest we saw last week. And so hopefully that was just a blip. But to your point, a point away from home in the Premier League is always a good thing.
Yeah, I think a good point, and I think that the last 10 minutes were positive signs with those signings.
Yeah, I agree.
On the pitch. Amore Hutchinson's got to do more, but I think there's probably a bit of expectation on him too, given his price tag. I thought Miendo, I think looks a hell of a player, especially when he dropped deep to kind of hold the ball strength wise.
Yeah,
I thought Chris Wood had another good game today. I mean, again, we praise Wood every week on the podcast, but I thought he was a shining light from today's draw.
Yeah, I might give him a 7. Back to my earlier comment, I might give him a 7.
You've really got the Sunday blues today, mate. At least it's a bank holiday Monday tomorrow here in the UK, so people are.
For you guys, yeah.
Yeah. For you, it's back to work, mate. It might cheer you up. You never know. You watch tomorrow. Something will happen again, and we'll have to jump on a podcast. Let's talk then before we wrap up, I guess, about Nuno's future. Do I think he'll leave? No. Do I think it will be a long-term fix? No. I think that this will be a problem that is going to have to be some way sorted soon. I think that Edu could leave. I think that Edu could get moved on, shall we say, as Marinakis' son did, Miltiadis, slightly, when there was a bit of conflict there between him and Steve Cooper and a few other personnel at the club. So I think we could see that. It would be a disaster for Nuno to leave, in my opinion. Yes, no man or manager is ever bigger than the football club. Who else are Forest realistically going to get? I don't want Ange Postecoglou. I'll happily sit here and say that. I don't think he's an awful coach. I just don't think he would fit the identity or the ethos of Nottingham Forest. So I just don't want Ange Postecoglou, and I don't want to change managers. I want stability at the football club, Mark. I want them. Why can't Forest have a manager for 5 years and everything go nice and the owner and everyone get on well? Why can't football be simple? So I don't know. I don't know what will happen this week. But I do also think that Marinakis will know that the fans will just want this sorted. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was a picture of Marinakis, Edu, and Nuno all holding hands in Greece by a pool in 30-degree heat come the end of this week. I don't know if you agree, Mark, or is that just me being too optimistic?
Well, I think the bookies have the 3 front runners as Ange Postecoglou, Danny Cowley, and Dave Asprey. So, I mean, I'd like to see Asprey make a return, to the manager role.
He'd just be doing Brian Clough impressions in the dressing room.
Not wrong with that. If he is, you should be as Peter Taylor. But in all seriousness, firstly, again, this is getting a little boring in that I agree with everything you say, Max. Doesn't happen very often. Usually we make, mind you, I think the pod's been interesting enough, given the content. We don't have to try and generate interest by being at odds with one another. But I agree with everything you're saying. I don't think Ange is a terrible manager. I just don't think he'd be a fit for the City ground. And also, I have a Rangers alliance as well. So having Celtic at the City Ground makes me feel a little bit sick. I wouldn't hate seeing Jose there. I think Jose Mourinho would be brilliant. But I do agree with your central point, which is stability, please. Like, we've just come off the back of a phenomenal season, 7th place. We're in Champions League spot before that last game of the season. First time back in Europe in 30 years. I was about to say arguably. I don't think you can even argue it. The best squad that Forest have had certainly in your lifetime. I mean, since the European Cup winning team, perhaps. I mean, obviously we've had some good teams in the 80s, but the talent we have available to us now is fantastic. And if we can really bond it, it's going to be something special. So I'd love to see Nuno stick around as well. None of the potential candidates really excite me.
No, and I think as well, despite our frustrations with Nuno and his comments, I think everyone will agree that I think the majority of the Forest fan base want him to stay. We all want this issue to be sorted. Let's just hope they get together, and also this be a bit of a wake-up call to the club to never let anything like this happen again. I feel so terribly sorry for the staff at Forest and the head of communications that has to deal with the press releases and everything.
The fans. And I will say that was one thing again about the fans today that I was impressed by, is that they weren't like overtly in support of Nuno. I was thinking, oh, please don't do 90 minutes of cheering Nuno's name kind of a thing. These are 3 grown-ass men who, behind closed doors, need to figure this out. We do not need a public power struggle. We do not need Nuno saying, look, see, they're all on my side. Like, it's ridiculous. So, yes, I heard there was some chanting for Nuno today, and that's great, right? But it didn't feel like it was above the norm. And so I was relieved to hear that. So, yeah, hopefully they can get this resolved here in the next week or two. It's not going to be something that can be fixed overnight, I don't think. But fingers crossed.
We'll see what happens. We'll keep you updated, of course, on the podcast. I was just ridiculously scrolling my phone then. If it looks like I was looking away from you, Mark, it wasn't. I was just looking at my phone, mate, to see if Forest had done anything crazy. I was
just watching Manchester United miss a penalty kick, Max. I wasn't even paying attention to you. So
who missed it?
I think it was Fernandes.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
I might go and watch that. I might go and put that game on now.
Yeah, it was, I'm not sure if it was a penalty or not, but that seems to be the way in modern football. I can't remember the last time I saw a clear-cut penalty. They have to go to VAR and take 20 minutes to decide. Anyway, he blasted it over the crossbar. So
don't get me started on that Leeds-Everton one. I thought Leeds were incredibly fortunate, but I've seen some people say, oh, well, he leant into the ball. He didn't, in my opinion. What could he have done there? He almost fell into the ball by accident.
Modern football's rubbish, Max.
Yeah, it is. Let's go back. In fact, Mark, take me back to the 70s and 80s. Let's transport Garibaldi Red to back then.
Oh, the 80s, mate, and the early 90s were great. They really were.
Right. We'll see what happens this week at Forest. We'll keep you updated, of course, on the podcast. But I think you hit the nail on the head, Mark, with that last comment from you, just summarising the past 72 hours. They are 3 grown-arse men. Get together in the boardroom, bang your heads together, sort it out for the greater good of Nottingham Forest Football Club. That would be nice. We'll keep you updated. Give us a like, share and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us across Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Leave us a review. If you did enjoy, we'll be back for a preview before West Ham, or if anything happens between now and then. And then, of course, our review after Forest's second home league game of the season. We shall see you all very soon. Come on, you Reds. A good point today on the road at Palace. Marinakis, Edu, Nuno, sort it out. Come on, you Reds.